paper where how's the research literature on data journalism developing, and what are the research gaps? So what could be future research paths for data journalism research? So we chose to answer these questions with the method of a so-called structured literature review. Why is structured literature review? What is this method actually good for? So it should develop insights, critical reflections, future research paths, future research questions. And the way it does this, it adopts a replicable, scientific, and transparent process that aims to minimize bias. I'm going to explain very briefly how we have done this. I'm happy to talk about this later, maybe a little more, especially in such a literature review. Inclusion and exclusion criteria are like very crucial, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So how did we find the literature? How did we select the literature? So basically, we have 3 different approaches for this. So first, we looked for data journalism with 9 similar terms in 15 different scientific databases. We scraped, imported all the results from these searches into our own literature database, screened everything, and also so made our first selection. This was our preliminary corpus, so step number 1. Step number 2 was we scraped all the references from all the from the preliminary corpus, so from the literature that we have selected, and also analyzed that. And method number 3 was we asked fellow data journalism researchers to also contribute different kinds of publications that we might have overseen. So in result, we got 40 papers on with a social science focus that had done empirical work on data journalism. And these papers were then analyzed with software-assisted qualitative coding on one side, and on the other side with a number of various computational methods. What did we find out? So this graph here shows the development of the literature in the past 2 decades. So as we can see here, in the past 3 years, most of the research on data journalism has been published. Interestingly, between 2001 and 2009, has not so much research happened. Although computer-assisted reporting was, of course, important, especially in the United States. Most of the research that has been published on data journalism was published in journal articles, and after that in conference papers. So, if you're in the social sciences, if you would like to get cited with your research on data journalism, then I would really recommend to write a journal article, not making a conference paper, because journal articles just get more cited. So the size of the bubble here corresponds with the numbers of citations in Google Scholar. We also looked what are the most influential works in the field. So an analysis of the reference sections of all the papers showed that Precision Journalism by Phil Mayer is the most cited work, together with an early, I would say, prototypical piece of data journalism research, Papazi and Dagiar's investigation of the programmer journalists in Chicago. But let's dig into the content of the publications. So what is interesting to note that only a minority of the publications have a theoretical foundation. But if they have such a theoretical section, repeatedly concepts of science and technology studies come up. And here, especially actor network theory is used to frame the phenomenon of data journalism. When we look at research designs and data collection methods, so how is data journalism studied? So this revealed a certain scarcity in quantitative data collection methods in contrast to qualitative, more exploratory ones. About 1 in 10 studies we analyzed collected data using surveys. Qualitative in-depth interviews are by far the most common method to use to analyze data journalism. Content analysis is also employed quite often, but like most items that are analyzed are news items that try to frame, that talk about data journalism. So data journalistic pieces that themselves, they're not so often analyzed. When we look at the geographical scope, where is data journalism investigated? There's a dominant bias towards the United States and the United Kingdom, followed by other Western countries. There's almost no research published in English on practices outside of Europe and North America. We also wanted to know what scholars in the field identify as research gaps. So here, cross-national comparative investigations are mentioned. Long-term studies, for example, newsroom ethnographies should be conducted. Of interest to scholars is also the role of technical artifacts such as software, or the role of software in the production process. And finally, there's also the need for studies how the consumers themselves, how readers experience data journalism. Not much is known about this. Coming to a conclusion. So data journalism has been grown tremendously in the past 3 years and beyond, and so has also its academic investigation. This increase has led to an improvement in quality in the research, on the one hand. An indicator for this is, for example, that newer publications on data journalism don't rely so much on publications from journalists themselves, but on a academic foundation. And those publications that are increasingly referenced have been produced by researchers following consistent methods. So we see this quality improvement on one side, but on the other side we see also issues with the current research, with the current literature. So few publications refer to theory or methodology. They basically just report what has been investigated. So this is basically one major issue that we see here. So we would wish for sometimes a more critical perspective and not so much reporting what has been investigated. And we also see research opportunities. So in addition to what has been already identified by others, for instance, practices in small news organizations. How do freelancers practice data journalism? How does local and mobile data journalism work? Questions of gender in data journalism are very rudimentarily addressed. And so what we also would find very interesting are investigating data journalism with so-called digital methods. That means investigating the field through the platforms it uses and the traces that data journalists leave there. For instance, how data journalists interact on GitHub, on mailing lists, or on Twitter would be another interesting perspective in studying the field. And of course, we would love to see more theory on data journalism. All right, thanks for the attention. There's one more thing. We built an interactive application that allows you to explore our corpus to research literature. So you can see who links to whom. You can read about important concepts, mentioned media organizations within the research literature. It's in beta. We'd love to hear your feedback. But please check it out. It's at literature.validproject.at. Thank you.
All right, so questions, comments? Esther?
Yes, I'm wondering about if you excluded studies in other languages than English.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Was it a huge amount or just?
I mean, we excluded quite a lot of papers in general, and we found quite a lot of literature on one hand in Spanish, and also in Scandinavian languages, and there's also in French, and Spanish literature happening. And so, I mean, yeah, every literature really has its limitations. I agree on that. Yeah, and we would have loved to include those, but yeah. I mean, it's also that sometimes researchers publish something in their like mother language and then publish it again in English, like
And what about research from the software side? I mean, automation and creative computing. Did you go into that as well as this?
Yeah. I can very briefly show you the terms that we use to select literature. There were synonymical terms for data journalism, such as algorithmic journalism or computational journalism, computer-assisted reporting. But we didn't use those terms here on the right, like DDJ, this broad, like many other search results, we could use them for our research. So everything that was sort of included within those search terms, and I mean this is a pretty broad definition, or like quite a lot of different synonyms and concepts for the practice of data journalism. We were not so much interested into automation and algorithms in journalism, but although like lots of research literature, of course, came up about this as well. But like our focus was on social science investigations that had looked at the practice of data journalism in newsrooms, especially the actors who conduct it.
To the extent that you're looking at the practice of data journalism, did you see evidence in the papers of the impact of that practice, or is that an area that's not considered?
Difficult to say. So when we look at the timeline, I mean, so data journalism research has basically started a little later than data journalism itself. So I believe like the investigation of data journalism has been like it's always a little later, and I don't see that much influence of social sciences on data journalism at the moment, I have to admit.
Sorry, just to clarify,
yeah.
Actually within the research itself,
yeah.
not the impact of the research on the practice of journalism, but the impact of the practice of data journalism more broadly outside of practice.
Oh. So, if I understand it correctly, you ask if researchers can also use data journalism-like methods for their research, or is that what you mean?
No, it's more the research seek to find out whether the practice of data journalism was actually doing anything worthwhile with journalism.
I don't. It's difficult. Yeah.
All right. So I think we thank here Julian, and then the next presenter comes from Greece.